My husband got my best friend pregnant while I was traveling and planning a surprise for him. But what I did afterward left everyone shocked. My name is Maya, and I need to tell you what happened when I came home early from what I thought was just another business trip. I had been married to David for 8 years, and my best friend Lisa had been part of our lives for even longer. I thought I knew these people better than I knew myself. I was wrong about everything. The conference in Denver ended 2 days early when the keynote speaker canceled due to illness. Instead of extending my stay like most attendees did, I decided to surprise David. We had been trying to have a baby for 3 years, and the stress was getting to both of us. I thought coming home early with good news about a potential promotion might lift his spirits. I remember feeling so excited during the 4-hour flight home. I had even stopped at the airport gift shop to buy his favorite chocolate and a bottle of wine to celebrate. The taxi ride from the airport felt endless, and I kept checking my phone, resisting the urge to text him. I wanted it to be a complete surprise. When the taxi pulled up to our house on Maple Street, I noticed several cars in the driveway that I didn't recognize. David's Honda was there, along with Lisa's white sedan, but there were at least 4 other vehicles parked along the street. My first thought was that maybe David was having some kind of work gathering, though it seemed odd he hadn't mentioned it. I paid the driver and wheeled my suitcase up the front walkway, fishing for my keys. That's when I heard the laughter and voices coming from our backyard. The sound was festive, almost party-like. I felt a little flutter of anxiety in my stomach, but I pushed it aside. Maybe David was just having friends over to watch the game. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside, immediately noticing the smell of something delicious cooking. The living room looked different somehow, tidier than usual, with fresh flowers on the coffee table. I could hear people talking and laughing in the kitchen and out on the back patio. Setting my suitcase by the stairs, I walked toward the kitchen, expecting to find David hosting some impromptu barbecue. But as I got closer, I heard something that made me freeze in the hallway. A woman's voice was saying something about nursery colors, and another voice mentioned baby names. My heart started beating faster. Were David's friends talking about someone else's baby? I took a few more steps and peeked around the corner into the kitchen. What I saw made my blood run cold. The entire kitchen was decorated with pale yellow and white streamers. There were balloons tied to chairs, and the counter was covered with wrapped gifts. A large cake sat in the center of the island with something written in flowing script that I couldn't quite make out from where I stood. But it was the banner stretched across the sliding door to the patio that made me feel like I was going to be sick. In cheerful yellow letters, it read, "Welcome, baby Thompson." Thompson was David's last name. Our last name. I stood there for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds, trying to process what I was seeing. Someone was having a baby shower in my house, using my husband's name, and I hadn't been invited to my own event. The voices got louder as people moved between the kitchen and the patio. I recognized several of them, David's coworkers and some neighbors, but I still couldn't see David or Lisa anywhere. That's when I heard Lisa's distinctive laugh coming from the backyard, followed by David's voice saying something about how excited he was to be a father. The words hit me like a physical blow. I stepped fully into the kitchen, my legs feeling unsteady. The cake was now clearly visible, and I could read the inscription, "Congratulations, David and Lisa," surrounded by tiny yellow baby carriages. The wrapped gifts on the counter suddenly made sense. The decorations, the celebration, the joy in everyone's voices. They were celebrating David and Lisa having a baby together. My husband and my best friend were having a baby together, and they were celebrating it in my house while I was supposed to be 3 states away, completely unaware of what had been happening in my own life. I stood in my own kitchen like a stranger, staring at decorations celebrating my husband's betrayal. My hands were trembling as I gripped the granite counter, trying to steady myself. The reality of what I was seeing felt impossible to accept, but the evidence was everywhere. Taking a deep breath, I forced myself to walk toward the sliding door leading to the patio. I needed to see this with my own eyes, needed to confront the truth that was unfolding in my backyard. Through the glass, I could see about 20 people scattered around our patio and lawn. David was standing near the grill, wearing the apron I had bought him last Christmas, looking more animated and happy than I had seen him in months. He was gesturing excitedly while talking to my father-in-law and his brother. But it was Lisa who made me gasp out loud. She was sitting in one of our patio chairs, wearing a flowing yellow dress that did nothing to hide her very obviously pregnant belly. She had to be at least 6 months along, maybe more. Her hand rested protectively on her bump while she laughed at something someone had said. 6 months. That meant this had been going on for at least 9 months, possibly longer. All those business trips I had taken, all those late nights at the office when David said he was too tired to wait up for me. All those times Lisa had canceled our girls' nights because she wasn't feeling well. I watched as David walked over to Lisa and placed his hand on her belly, his face lighting up with a tenderness I hadn't seen from him in years. She looked up at him with such love and contentment, and he leaned down to kiss her forehead. The gesture was so intimate, so natural, that it was clear this wasn't new for them. My mother-in-law was there too, cooing over Lisa and holding what looked like tiny baby clothes. She had always complained that David and I were taking too long to give her grandchildren. Well, apparently she was getting her wish, just not from me. I noticed my own mother sitting at the patio table, laughing and chatting with the other guests like this was the most normal thing in the world. My mother, who I called every Sunday, who I had confided in about our fertility struggles, who I had cried to just last month about feeling disconnected from David. They all knew. Every single person at this party knew that my husband had gotten my best friend pregnant, and they were all here celebrating it like it was wonderful news. While I had been away working to support our life together, they had been planning this betrayal. I slid open the patio door and stepped outside. The conversation continued for a few seconds before people started noticing me. The laughter died down in waves as more heads turned in my direction. Lisa saw me first. The color drained from her face, and she instinctively wrapped her arms around her belly. David followed her gaze, and when his eyes met mine, he looked like he had seen a ghost. "Maya," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You're supposed to be in Denver until Thursday." "Surprise," I said, my voice sounding strangely calm even to my own ears. The conference ended early. I thought I'd come home and surprise my husband. The entire party had gone silent now. 20 pairs of eyes were staring at me, and I could feel the tension crackling in the air. My mother started to stand up from her chair, her face filled with what looked like guilt and panic. "Sweetheart," she began, but I held up my hand to stop her. "No," I said, still looking directly at David. "I think I deserve an explanation. Right here. Right now in front of everyone who apparently knew about this except for me." Lisa struggled to stand up from her chair, her pregnant belly making the movement awkward. "Maya, please, let us explain." "Explain what exactly?" I asked, my voice getting stronger. "Explain how my husband got my best friend pregnant? Explain how you're 6 months along, which means this has been going on for almost a year? Explain how everyone I love and trust decided to celebrate this betrayal in my own backyard while I was away working?" David took a step toward me, his hands raised like he was approaching a wild animal. "Maya, please calm down. We can talk about this inside." "Calm down?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I just came home to find a baby shower for my cheating husband and backstabbing best friend in my own house. And you want me to calm down?" I looked around at all the faces staring at me, these people who I had considered family and friends. "How long have you all known? How long have you been lying to my face and pretending everything was normal?" The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity. I could see people exchanging glances, probably wondering who was going to be brave enough to answer my question first. It was my mother-in-law who finally spoke up. "Maya, dear, we wanted to tell you, but David thought it would be better to wait until you came home from your trip." "Wait for what exactly?" I asked, my voice rising. "Wait to tell me that my marriage is over? That my best friend has been sleeping with my husband? That I've been made a fool of for almost a year?" David stepped forward again. "Maya, it's not what you think. Lisa and I, we fell in love. It wasn't planned, it just happened. You're always traveling, always working. We were both lonely and—" "Don't you dare blame this on me," I interrupted, my composure finally cracking. "Don't you dare stand there holding your pregnant mistress and tell me this is my fault because I work hard to support our life." Lisa finally found her voice. "Maya, I'm so sorry. I never meant for it to happen this way. David and I, we tried to fight our feelings, but—" "How long?" I demanded, cutting her off. "I want to know exactly how long this has been going on." David and Lisa exchanged a look that told me everything I needed to know. It had been going on for much longer than I had initially thought. "Almost 2 years, David said quietly. The admission hit me like a punch to the gut. 2 years. That meant they had started their affair shortly after Lisa's divorce was finalized. All those times she had come crying to me about feeling lonely, all those double dates and family barbecues where they had sat across from each other pretending to be nothing more than friends. 2 years, I repeated, more to myself than to anyone else. 2 years of lies. 2 years of making me feel crazy for suspecting something was wrong. 2 years of birthday parties and holidays and anniversaries where you both looked me in the eye and pretended to care about me." My mother stood up from her chair. "Maya, honey, please try to understand. They didn't want to hurt you." I turned to look at her. This woman who had raised me, who I had trusted with my deepest fears and insecurities. You knew too, didn't you? When I called you crying last month because David seemed distant, you knew exactly why. When I told you I was worried our marriage was in trouble, you knew he was already planning a future with someone else. She couldn't meet my eyes. We all hoped they would come to their senses before it went too far. Too far? I laughed bitterly. She's pregnant, Mom. I'd say we're well past too far. I looked around at all the guilty faces surrounding me. You're all here celebrating. You're all happy about this. You've been planning this party, buying gifts, decorating my house, all while letting me believe I still had a marriage to save. Lisa was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. Maya, please. I know you hate me right now, but I do love him, and he loves me. We want to be a family. A family, I repeated. Well, congratulations. I hope you'll be very happy together in the life you've built on the ruins of mine. David's brother, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. Maya, maybe you should take some time to cool off before you say things you'll regret. Regret? I turned on him. The only thing I regret is wasting 8 years of my life on a man who was capable of this level of betrayal. The only thing I regret is trusting people who were laughing behind my back while I worked 60-hour weeks to pay for this house, this life, everything we built together. David's face went pale. Maya, you don't mean that. Oh, I mean every word of it. I looked directly at Lisa. Tell me something, Lisa. When did you realize you were pregnant? And more importantly, when did you decide to plan this little celebration for today, knowing I was supposed to be out of town? Lisa's tears were coming harder now. We found out 3 weeks ago. David said you wouldn't be back until Thursday, and we thought it would be easier if everyone found out at once, together, so we could explain everything when you got home. Explain, I said slowly. You were going to explain to me that my husband knocked up my best friend, and I should just accept it because you've decided you're in love. I looked at the banner stretched across my patio, at the gifts piled on my patio table, at the cake with their names on it sitting on my counter. You used my house for this. You used my home to celebrate destroying my life. David finally seemed to find some backbone. This is my house too, Maya. We're married. Not for much longer, I said, the words coming out clearer and more certain than anything I had said in years. I want all of you out of my house. Now. Take your gifts, take your decorations, take your cake, and get out. Maya, my mother said, reaching for me. Don't make any decisions while you're upset. This is a shock, but maybe if you just give it some time. I stepped away from her touch. Time for what, Mom? Time to get used to the idea that the people I trusted most in the world have been lying to me for 2 years? Time to accept that I should share my husband with his pregnant girlfriend? I looked around one last time at all of them. I want you all to remember this moment. Remember how it felt to watch me find out this way. Because from now on, when people ask what happened to David and Maya's marriage, you can tell them exactly how it ended. I turned and walked back into the house, leaving them all standing in stunned silence on my patio. I stood in my living room, listening to the hushed voices and hurried movement outside as people began gathering their things and leaving. I could hear David trying to manage the situation, probably making excuses and promising explanations later, but I wasn't interested in anything he had to say. Moving mechanically, I went upstairs to our bedroom and grabbed the largest suitcase from the closet. I started throwing clothes into it, not caring about what matched or what I might need. I just needed to get out of this house before I completely fell apart. My hands were shaking as I packed, and I kept stopping to take deep breaths. 2 years. The number kept echoing in my head. 2 years of David coming home and kissing me hello after spending time with Lisa. 2 years of Lisa calling me her best friend while she was sleeping with my husband. 2 years of everyone around me knowing the truth except me. I heard David's footsteps on the stairs and his voice calling my name, but I ignored him. A few seconds later, he appeared in the doorway of our bedroom. Maya, please, we need to talk about this. I didn't look up from my packing. No, we don't. We need to talk to lawyers. That's the only conversation we're going to have from now on. Don't be ridiculous, he said, stepping into the room. We can work this out. People make mistakes. Marriages survive infidelity all the time. I finally looked at him. This man I had shared a bed with for 8 years and felt nothing but disgust. Infidelity is a one-night mistake. David, what you did was build an entire secret life with another woman. You got her pregnant. You made me believe I was the problem when we couldn't conceive. His face flushed. Maya, I never said you were the problem. You didn't have to say it. Every month when I got my period, every negative pregnancy test, you made me feel like I was failing as a wife. Meanwhile, you were proving your fertility just fine with my best friend. I zipped up the suitcase and lifted it off the bed. I'm done with this conversation. I'm done with this marriage. I'm done with all of it. Where are you going? He asked, moving to block my path to the door. None of your business. I pushed past him and headed for the stairs. He followed me, his voice getting desperate. Maya, please don't do this. I know I messed up, but we can go to counseling. We can work through this. I stopped at the bottom of the stairs and turned to face him. Work through what, David? The fact that you're going to be a father with another woman? The fact that you've been living a double life for 2 years? The fact that you let me make a fool of myself trying to save a marriage that was already over? I could hear voices still coming from the backyard, though much quieter now. Most of the guests had probably left, but I could see Lisa's car was still in the driveway. Is she still here? I asked. David nodded reluctantly. She's upset. She wants to talk to you. Well, she's going to be disappointed. I have nothing to say to her, and I certainly don't want to hear anything she has to say to me. I grabbed my purse from the hall table and headed for the front door. David followed me, pleading, Maya, please just give me a chance to explain everything properly, without all the yelling in the audience, just you and me. I opened the front door and turned back to him one last time. You had 8 years to be honest with me. David, you had 2 years to end our marriage before betraying me like this. You had dozens of chances to tell me the truth before I had to find out by walking into my own home and discovering a baby shower for your pregnant mistress. I could see tears in his eyes now, but I felt nothing. I'm going to file for divorce first thing Monday morning. I suggest you find yourself a good lawyer. 20 minutes later, I was checking into the Hampton Inn on the other side of town. The desk clerk, a young woman with kind eyes, must have sensed something was wrong, because she didn't ask any questions when I requested a room for an indefinite stay and paid with my credit card. Once I was alone in the sterile hotel room, I finally allowed myself to break down. I sat on the edge of the bed and cried harder than I had cried since my father died 5 years ago. But mixed in with the grief and betrayal was something else I hadn't expected. Relief. For months, I had felt like something was wrong with my marriage, but I couldn't put my finger on what it was. David had been distant, distracted, and increasingly critical of my work schedule. I had started wondering if there was someone else, but every time I asked, he made me feel paranoid and insecure. Now I knew I hadn't been paranoid at all. My instincts had been right. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for. 3 months ago, when I first started suspecting David might be cheating, I had quietly consulted with a divorce attorney, just to understand what my options might be. I had never followed through, choosing instead to try to work on our marriage. Now I was grateful for that conversation, because I remembered exactly what the attorney had told me about protecting my assets. Monday morning couldn't come fast enough. I had spent the entire weekend in my hotel room, ordering room service and making lists of everything I could remember about our finances. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became, not just about the betrayal, but about how David had been living off my success while building a future with someone else. At 9 o'clock sharp, I was sitting in the law office of Patricia Wong, the attorney I had consulted months earlier. She remembered our previous conversation and didn't seem surprised to see me back. I'm sorry it came to this, Maya, she said, reviewing the notes from our earlier meeting. But I'm glad you reached out to me before things got too complicated. The preliminary research we did in April is going to save us a lot of time now. That was the smartest thing I had done in months. When I first started suspecting David was cheating, I had quietly gathered copies of all our financial documents, bank statements, mortgage papers, investment accounts, even receipts for major purchases. I told myself I was just being paranoid, but deep down I think I knew I was preparing for this day. So, what exactly are my options? I asked, though I had a feeling I already knew the answer. Patricia smiled, and there was something almost predatory about it. Maya, you're in an incredibly strong position. First, this is a no-fault divorce state, so the adultery itself doesn't impact the property division. However, the financial picture is very much in your favor. She pulled out a folder and spread several documents across her desk. Based on what we documented before, you purchased the house entirely with your own funds from your inheritance. The down payment, the mortgage payments, even the renovations, all paid for with your money or your income. I nodded, remembering how proud I had been to buy our dream home with the money my grandmother had left me. Your salary is nearly 3 times David's, Patricia continued. You've been the primary breadwinner throughout your marriage. The investment accounts are primarily funded by your contributions. Even the cars. You paid for both of them. She leaned back in her chair. In essence, David has been living a lifestyle entirely funded by your earnings while conducting an affair for 2 years. The court is not going to look favorably on that. What about spousal support? I asked. Given the income disparity and the fact that you paid for virtually everything during the marriage, he might be entitled to some temporary support. However, his adultery and the fact that he's about to have a child with another woman complicates that significantly. Patricia pulled out another document. There's something else you should know. I had an investigator do some preliminary work after our first meeting. David has been using the credit card you pay for to take Lisa on dates, buy her gifts, even pay for her prenatal appointments. My jaw dropped. He used my money to fund his affair? That's exactly what he did. And that could be considered dissipation of marital assets, which means the court could order him to reimburse you for those expenses. I felt a surge of vindication. For months, David had made me feel guilty about working so much, about traveling for business, about not being home enough. Meanwhile, he had been using the money I earned to wine and dine his pregnant girlfriend. What's the timeline for all of this? I asked. I can file the papers today. Given the circumstances, his adultery, the pregnancy, and the financial evidence we have, I expect this to move fairly quickly. He'll be served within 48 hours. Patricia leaned forward. Maya, I want you to understand something. David is about to realize that the comfortable life he's been living was entirely dependent on your income. He's going to panic when he sees these papers, and he's probably going to come to you begging to work things out. That's not going to happen, I said firmly. I believe you, but I also want you to be prepared for him to get nasty when he realizes what he's losing. Men like David often become vindictive when their financial security is threatened. I thought about David's shocked face when I told him I was filing for divorce. How quickly he had gone from apologetic to demanding. Patricia was probably right. This was going to get ugly. There's one more thing, Patricia said. The house. Since you purchased it entirely with your own funds, it's your separate property. David has no legal claim to it. That news hit me harder than I expected. Our house, the place where I had planned to raise children with David, where I had hosted Christmas dinners and birthday parties. It was mine alone now. David would have to leave. How long does he have? I asked. Typically 30 days from when he's served, but given that he's already violated the trust of the marriage and used marital resources inappropriately, we might be able to expedite that. I signed all the necessary papers and wrote Patricia a check for her retainer fee. Walking out of her office, I felt lighter than I had in months. For the first time since Friday afternoon, I felt like I was in control of my own life again. David was served with the divorce papers on Wednesday afternoon while he was at work. I know this because he called me exactly 17 minutes later, and he sounded completely panicked. Maya, what the hell is this? He said when I answered the phone. You can't be serious about this divorce stuff. I'm completely serious, I replied calmly. I was sitting in my hotel room, feeling more at peace than I had felt in years. But Maya, we need to talk about this. You can't just throw away 8 years of marriage without even trying to work things out. David, you threw away 8 years of marriage when you started sleeping with my best friend 2 years ago. I'm just making it official. There was silence on the other end of the line, and then I heard him take a shaky breath. The papers say you want me out of the house in 30 days. Maya, that's not fair. That's my home too. Actually, it's not, I said, surprised by how calm I sounded. I bought that house with my grandmother's inheritance money. I've paid the mortgage, the insurance, the property taxes, all of it. According to the law, it's my separate property. That's not how marriage works, Maya. We built a life together in that house. You built a lie in that house, David. You brought Lisa into our home. Into our bed, probably. And you made a mockery of everything we had. It wasn't like that, he said, his voice getting desperate. Maya, I was lonely. You were traveling all the time, working constantly. Lisa was going through her divorce and she needed someone to talk to. It just happened gradually. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. So this is my fault because I worked hard to support our lifestyle? Because I traveled for the job that paid for your car, your clothes, your meals, everything you've had for the past 8 years? I never said it was your fault. You just did. David, you justified cheating on me by blaming me for working too much. I paused, letting that sink in. Tell me something. When you were comforting Lisa through her divorce, did you mention that you were married? Maya, please, did you tell her about the fertility treatments we were going through? Did you mention that your wife was spending thousands of dollars trying to get pregnant while you were already getting another woman pregnant? The silence stretched on for so long I thought he might have hung up. Maya, he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you. But I love you. I've always loved you. What happened with Lisa? It doesn't change that. You love me? I repeated. David, you used my credit card to pay for dates with your pregnant girlfriend. You used my money to buy gifts for the woman you were cheating on me with. That's not love. That's theft. I never meant for it to go this far, he said, starting to cry. I thought maybe Lisa and I would just remain friends. I never planned for her to get pregnant. But she did get pregnant. And you made the choice to continue the affair. You made the choice to lie to me every single day for 2 years. You made the choice to let me find out the way I did. David's voice became pleading. Maya, I'll end it with Lisa. I'll tell her it's over. We can go to counseling, we can work this out. Please don't throw our marriage away over one mistake. One mistake? I stood up from the hotel bed, my composure finally cracking. David, she's 6 months pregnant with your child. You can't just end it and pretend it never happened. You're going to be a father. I don't want to be a father with her, he said desperately. I want to be a father with you. We can try again. We can go back to the fertility clinic. The audacity of his suggestion left me speechless for a moment. You think I would want to have children with a man who cheated on me for 2 years? You think I would want to raise a child alongside the one you're having with my former best friend? Maya, please just think about this logically. We have history together. We have a life together. Lisa was just a mistake, a moment of weakness that got out of hand. No, David. Lisa was a choice. Every time you slept with her was a choice. Every lie you told me was a choice. Every day you let me believe our marriage was worth fighting for while you were building a future with someone else was a choice. I could hear him crying harder now, and part of me almost felt sorry for him. But then I remembered walking into my own house and seeing that banner celebrating their pregnancy. And any sympathy I might have felt disappeared. The papers say 30 days, David. I suggest you use that time to find somewhere else to live and figure out how you're going to support your new family without my income. By Thursday evening, the phone call started. First it was my mother, then David's mother, followed by his brother and sister-in-law. They all had the same message. I was being too hasty, too emotional, too unforgiving. They all thought I should reconsider. My mother was the most persistent. She called 3 times before I finally answered. Maya, sweetheart, I think you need to slow down and really think about what you're doing, she said without even saying hello. I've thought about it plenty, Mom. I've thought about it every day for the past week. But divorce? That's such a permanent solution to what might be a temporary problem. I was sitting in the hotel restaurant, picking at a salad I didn't really want. Mom, David got another woman pregnant. That's not temporary. That baby is going to be a permanent reminder of his betrayal for the rest of our lives. People make mistakes, Maya. Even good people sometimes make terrible choices. Good people don't conduct 2-year affairs while their wives are working to support them, I said. My voice rising enough that other diners started looking in my direction. David loves you, she insisted. He's called me 3 times today. He's devastated about losing you. He should have thought about that before he started sleeping with Lisa. My mother sighed. Maya, I know you're hurt. I know you feel betrayed. But marriage is about forgiveness. It's about working through the hard times together. Mom, did you know? I asked directly. When I called you crying last month because I felt like David was pulling away from me, did you know he was having an affair? The silence on the other end of the line told me everything I needed to know. We suspected something might be going on, she finally admitted. But we hoped it would end before you found out. We thought maybe if we didn't acknowledge it, it would just go away. I felt like I'd been slapped. So instead of warning me, instead of giving me a chance to confront him on my own terms, you all decided to let me be humiliated in front of 20 people at a baby shower in my own backyard. That's not how we wanted you to find out. But that's how you let it happen. You all chose to protect David and Lisa instead of protecting me. My mother's voice got defensive. Maya, we were trying to protect everyone. We thought if we could just get through this quietly, maybe the 3 of you could work things out like adults. Work things out? I laughed bitterly. Mom, she's having his baby. How exactly did you think we were going to work that out? A nice little shared custody arrangement where I help raise my husband's affair baby? Stranger things have happened. Families can be complicated. No, Mom, this isn't complicated. This is simple. David chose Lisa over me. He chose to lie to me for 2 years. He chose to use my money to fund his affair. And you all chose to enable him. David's mother called an hour later with essentially the same message, but her approach was different. Where my mother had tried guilt, David's mother went straight to manipulation. Maya, dear, I know you're upset, but you have to think about David's future. He's going to be a father now. He needs stability. He should have thought about that before he got my best friend pregnant. Lisa is a lovely girl. And she's going to need support during this pregnancy. If you divorce David now, you'll be making things so much harder for all of them. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Are you seriously asking me to stay married to your son so he can better support his pregnant mistress? I'm asking you to be compassionate. David made a mistake, but he's trying to do the right thing now. The right thing would have been to not cheat on his wife in the first place. Maya, you're a smart, successful woman. You'll be fine on your own. But David and Lisa are going to have a baby to think about. They need each other right now. It took me a moment to process what she had just said. So, because I'm successful, I should just step aside and let them be happy? Because I can take care of myself, I should sacrifice my marriage so they can play house with their affair baby? That's not what I meant. That's exactly what you meant. You think because I make good money and don't need David financially, I should just gracefully bow out so he can be with the woman he really wants. The calls continued throughout the evening. David's brother called to tell me I was being vindictive. His sister-in-law called to suggest couples therapy. Even my own sister called from Seattle to tell me I should think carefully before throwing away my marriage. By 10 o'clock, I had turned off my phone and was sitting in my hotel room, staring out the window at the parking lot. I felt more alone than I had ever felt in my life, but I also felt something else. Clarity. Every single person who had called me was asking me to sacrifice my dignity, my self-respect, and my happiness, so that David and Lisa could have their perfect little family without any consequences. They wanted me to be the understanding ex-wife who gracefully stepped aside and maybe even helped babysit on weekends. But none of them had asked how I felt. None of them had asked what I wanted. None of them seemed to care that I was the victim in this situation, not David. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to be the accommodating woman who made things easier for everyone else. I wasn't going to quietly disappear so David and Lisa could have their happily ever after. I was going to fight for what was mine, and I was going to make sure they understood exactly what they had thrown away. The divorce was finalized 6 weeks later, faster than even Patricia had predicted. David didn't contest anything, probably because his lawyer explained that fighting would only cost him money he didn't have and wouldn't change the outcome. I got the house, the investment accounts, both cars, and my retirement funds. David got his personal belongings and a stern warning from the judge about using marital assets to fund extramarital affairs. But the real consequences didn't become clear until David tried to rent an apartment. He called me on a Tuesday afternoon, 3 days before his 30-day deadline to move out of the house. His voice was strained and desperate. Maya, I need to ask you a favor. We communicate through lawyers now, David. You know that. Please, just listen. I can't find anywhere to live. Every apartment I've applied for has been rejected because my income isn't high enough to qualify. I was sitting in my office reviewing quarterly reports, and his call was interrupting my work. That's not my problem. Maya, please, I have nowhere to go. Lisa's apartment is too small for both of us and the baby when it comes. I just need a few more weeks to figure something out. You've had 6 weeks to figure something out, David. What have you been doing with your time? I've been apartment hunting, but the rent prices in this city are insane, and with my salary alone, no one will approve me. For 8 years, David had been living in a house that cost $3,000 a month in mortgage payments, plus utilities, insurance, and property taxes. He had been driving a car with a $400 monthly payment. He had been eating at restaurants, buying clothes, taking vacations, all subsidized by my income. Now he was discovering what life looked like on a $45,000 salary in a city where the median rent for a one-bedroom apartment was $1,800 a month. Have you tried looking in surrounding areas? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Maya, I can't afford to live an hour away from my job. The gas costs alone would eat up what I save on rent. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to blow up our marriage. Don't be like this, he pleaded. I know you hate me right now, but you're not a cruel person. I'm going to be homeless in 3 days. I felt a flash of the old sympathy, the instinct to fix his problems that had defined our entire marriage. But then I remembered walking into my house and seeing Lisa's pregnant belly, seeing my mother's guilty face, seeing all those people celebrating my humiliation. David, for 8 years I supported you. I paid for your car, your clothes, your meals, your entertainment. I paid for the roof over your head while you were sneaking around behind my back. The only reason you could afford to take Lisa on dates was because I was paying for everything else in your life. I know that, he said quietly. I know I took advantage of your generosity. It wasn't generosity, David. It was partnership. I thought we were building a life together. I thought my success was our success. But apparently, you saw it as a free ride that allowed you to pursue other women. That's not fair. What's not fair is that I've been supporting your lifestyle while you've been cheating on me. What's not fair is that you used my money to wine and dine your girlfriend while I was traveling for work to earn that money. I paused, letting that sink in. You want to know what I think, David? I think this is the first time in your adult life that you're experiencing the real cost of your choices, and you don't like it. Maya, please, I'm begging you. Just let me stay a few more weeks. No. You have 3 days to get your things out of my house. After that, I'm changing the locks. Where am I supposed to go? I don't know, David. Maybe Lisa's parents have a couch you can sleep on. Maybe your mother, who was so concerned about your future, can help you out. Maybe your brother, who thought I was being too harsh, can offer you his guest room. The line went quiet for a long moment. They all said no, he admitted finally. That admission hit me harder than I expected. All those people who had called to tell me I should forgive David, who had insisted that family should stick together, who had made me feel guilty for not being more understanding, none of them were willing to actually help him when he needed it. Then I guess you're learning what I learned that day in our backyard, I said. Sometimes the people you think will be there for you aren't. 3 days later, I drove by the house to make sure David had moved out. His car wasn't in the driveway, and when I went inside, all of his belongings were gone. He had left the keys on the kitchen counter, along with a note that simply said, "I'm sorry." I later heard through mutual friends that he had ended up renting a studio apartment in a rough part of town, the only place he could afford on his salary alone. The commute to his job was over an hour each way, and he had to sell his car and buy an older, cheaper model to reduce his monthly payments. For the first time in years, David was living within his means. And apparently, his means were much more limited than he had realized. 2 months after the divorce was finalized, David called me from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Maya, it's me," he said, and I could immediately tell something was very wrong. His voice was shaky, and he sounded like he'd been crying. "David, I told you we don't—" "Please, just listen to me for 1 minute," he interrupted. "I'm not calling to ask you to take me back or anything like that. I'm calling because I'm desperate, and I don't have anywhere else to turn." I was in my kitchen, making dinner for myself in the peaceful quiet of my house. The house that was finally mine alone, decorated the way I wanted it, filled with only my things and my memories. "What do you want, David?" "I got evicted," he said, and I could hear him starting to cry. "I couldn't make the rent this month, and they gave me 48 hours to get out. I'm living in my car." Despite everything he had done to me, hearing him say he was homeless still hit me in the chest. "What about Lisa? Can't you stay with her?" David laughed, but it was bitter and broken. "Lisa and I aren't together anymore." That stopped me cold. "What do you mean you're not together? She's pregnant with your baby." "Was pregnant," he corrected, his voice barely above a whisper. "David, what are you saying?" "She lost the baby 6 weeks ago. Miscarriage in the 2nd trimester. The doctor said it was just one of those things that happens sometimes." I sank down onto one of my kitchen stools, trying to process what he was telling me. The baby that had been the catalyst for destroying our marriage, the pregnancy that had been celebrated with cake and decorations in my backyard, was gone. "I'm sorry," I said, and I meant it. Whatever Lisa had done to me, losing a child was devastating. "After she lost the baby, everything fell apart," David continued. "She said there was no point in us being together anymore. She said the only reason she had stayed with me was because of the pregnancy. David, she was right. Maya, without the baby, there was nothing left between us. She realized that I couldn't give her the life she wanted. I couldn't afford to take care of her the way she expected to be taken care of. I thought about Lisa, who had always been attracted to men who could provide for her financially. Her ex-husband had been a successful accountant, and she had been devastated when their divorce left her with less money than she was accustomed to. So she left you," I said. "She filed for divorce last month. She's asking for spousal support, even though we were only married for 4 months. I almost laughed at the irony. David had left me for Lisa, and now Lisa was leaving him for the same reason he had been able to date her in the first place: lack of financial security. "Maya," David said, his voice breaking, "I know I have no right to ask you for anything after what I did. I know you hate me, and you have every reason to. But I'm sleeping in my car behind a gas station, and I don't know what else to do. What exactly are you asking me for, David?" "I don't know. Maybe just, could I sleep on your couch for a few nights? Just until I can figure something else out. I'll pay you back as soon as I can." The audacity of his request was breathtaking. He wanted to come back to the house he had betrayed me in, the house he had brought Lisa into, the house where I had found out about their affair in the most humiliating way possible. "You want me to let you stay in my house?" I said slowly. I know how it sounds. I know it's crazy. But Maya, I have nowhere else to go. No one else will help me. What about your family? Your mother who was so worried about your future? Your brother who thought I was being too harsh? I've asked them all. My mom says she doesn't have room. My brother says his wife won't allow it. My sister says it would be too awkward for the kids. So all the people who had pressured me to forgive David, who had made me feel guilty for divorcing him, who had insisted that family should stick together, none of them were willing to practice what they preached. David, do you remember what you said to me the night I found out about the affair? When I asked you how long it had been going on? Maya, please don't. You said you were lonely because I was always working. You blamed me for your infidelity because I traveled for business. Do you remember that? Yes, he whispered. Do you know why I worked so hard, David? Do you know why I traveled and put in long hours and built my career? To be successful, he said uncertainly. To take care of you, I corrected. To take care of us. Every promotion I got, every business trip I took, every late night at the office, I did it all so we could have a better life together. I worked my ass off so you could have nice things, so we could live in a beautiful house, so we could plan for our future. I could hear him crying harder now. And while I was working to build our life together, you were using the security I provided to destroy it. You were using my success as a launching pad for your affair. I know, he sobbed. I know I ruined everything. I know I threw away the best thing that ever happened to me. Yes, you did. And now you're experiencing what your life looks like without me in it. This is what your $45,000 salary actually provides, David. This is the reality you chose when you decided I wasn't enough for you. I stood up from the kitchen stool and looked around at my beautiful, peaceful home. The answer is no, David. You can't stay here. You can't come back to the life you threw away and expect me to rescue you from the consequences of your choices. 3 weeks after David called me from his car, I learned the full truth about what had happened between him and Lisa. The information came from an unexpected source, Lisa herself. I was grocery shopping on a Saturday morning when I turned down the cereal aisle and found myself face to face with her. She looked terrible, pale, thin, with dark circles under her eyes. She was clearly still recovering from the miscarriage, both physically and emotionally. For a moment, we just stared at each other. I hadn't seen her since that awful day in my backyard, and I wasn't sure what to say. Part of me wanted to turn around and walk away, but something in her expression stopped me. Maya, she said quietly, I'm glad I ran into you. I've been wanting to talk to you. I don't think we have anything to talk about, Lisa. Please, she said, stepping closer. I know you have no reason to listen to me, but there are things you need to know. Things about David that you don't know. Against my better judgment, I found myself curious. What things? Lisa looked around the busy grocery store and lowered her voice. Not here. Could we maybe get coffee? There's a lot I need to tell you. 20 minutes later, we were sitting in a small cafe downtown. Lisa ordered tea instead of coffee and wrapped her hands around the mug like she was trying to warm herself. I want to start by saying I'm sorry, she began. I know that doesn't mean much now, but I am truly sorry for what I did to you, to our friendship, to your marriage. I didn't respond. I wanted to hear what she had to say before I decided whether her apology meant anything. Maya, David lied to you about how our affair started. He told you it began 2 years ago, but that wasn't true. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? It started 3 months after my divorce was finalized. That was 3.5 years ago, Maya. Not 2 years. 3.5 years. I felt like I was going to be sick. 3.5 years meant their affair had started during some of the happiest times in my marriage. It meant David had been cheating on me during our anniversary trip to Europe, during the holidays when I thought we were finally getting back on track, during all those months when I believed we were working towards starting a family. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Lisa's eyes filled with tears. Because after I lost the baby, David showed me who he really is. And I realized that everything he did to you, he was capable of doing to anyone. She took a shaky sip of her tea. When I first got pregnant, David was so excited. He talked about how we were going to be this perfect little family, how he was finally going to have the life he always wanted. But after I miscarried, she trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. What happened after you miscarried, Lisa? He was disappointed, but not devastated the way I was. I was grieving the loss of our child, and he was already talking about trying again. But Maya, he wasn't talking about trying again with me. I stared at her, not understanding what she meant. 3 days after I came home from the hospital, David told me he thought maybe our relationship had run its course. He said he had been thinking about our future, and he wasn't sure we were compatible long-term. The cruelty of what she was describing was breathtaking. He left you while you were grieving your miscarriage? He said the pregnancy had been an accident, and without it, there wasn't really a reason for us to be together. He said he thought we had both been caught up in the excitement of the affair and the drama of leaving you. But now that reality had set in, maybe we should both move on. Lisa wiped her eyes with a napkin. But Maya, here's the thing that made me realize what kind of man he really is. Before he left me, he asked if I thought you might take him back. I felt my jaw drop open. He what? He wanted to know if I thought there was any chance you would forgive him and let him come home. He said he had made a mistake leaving you, and he wondered if maybe we could all just pretend the past few months never happened. I couldn't speak. The audacity, the sheer narcissism of thinking he could just flip back and forth between women based on what was most convenient for him, was mind-boggling. When I told him absolutely not, that you would never take him back after what he did, he got angry. He said I had ruined his life by getting pregnant in the first place. He said if I hadn't forced him to choose between us, he would still have his comfortable life with you. Lisa looked directly at me, her eyes filled with regret and something that looked like recognition. Maya, he blamed me for destroying his marriage. But the truth is, he destroyed it himself years before I ever got pregnant. He just used me as an excuse to finally leave. Why are you telling me all this now? I asked. Because when I divorced him, I asked for spousal support. And David told the judge that he couldn't afford to pay me anything because his ex-wife had taken him for everything he was worth in their divorce. I felt a flash of anger. He said what? He painted you as this vindictive woman who had destroyed him financially out of spite. He said you had kept assets that rightfully belonged to him just to punish him for falling in love with someone else. The lies were so outrageous I almost laughed. Lisa, I never took anything from David because there was nothing of his to take. Everything we had during our marriage, the house, the cars, the savings, it was all paid for with my money. I know that now, she said quietly. After the judge denied his request to reduce spousal support, I did some research. I found out about your inheritance, about your salary, about how you had supported him throughout your entire marriage. Lisa leaned forward across the table. Maya, David is not the man either of us thought he was. He's not capable of truly loving anyone except himself. Everything he does is calculated to benefit him, and when it stops benefiting him, he moves on. I thought about David calling me from his car, begging me to let him sleep on my couch, telling me he had nowhere else to turn. Even then, even in his desperation, he had been looking for a way to use me. What are you going to do now? I asked Lisa. I'm moving back home to live with my parents while I get back on my feet. I start a new job next month. She paused. Maya, I know I have no right to ask this, but I hope someday you can forgive me. Not for David's sake, but for your own. Carrying all this anger isn't going to hurt him. He's already moved on to whatever scheme he's planning next. It's only going to hurt you. As I drove home from the cafe, I realized Lisa was right about one thing. David had already moved on. He wasn't sitting somewhere mourning the loss of our marriage or the life we had built together. He was probably already looking for his next target, his next source of financial security and emotional validation. But I wasn't angry anymore. For the first time since that awful day in my backyard, I felt truly free. 6 months after my conversation with Lisa, I saw David one last time. I was having dinner with a colleague at a restaurant downtown when I spotted him sitting alone at the bar. He looked completely different from the man I had been married to. Thinner, older, with a defeated posture that made him seem smaller than I remembered. I almost didn't approach him, but something made me get up from my table and walk over. Maybe I needed closure, or maybe I was just curious to see how he was doing. Hello, David, I said, taking the empty bar stool next to him. He looked up from his drink, whiskey, neat, which he had never drunk during our marriage, and his face went through a series of emotions. Surprise, shame, hope, and finally resignation. Maya, he said quietly, I didn't expect to see you here. I was having dinner with a client. I saw you sitting here alone and thought I'd say hello. He gestured to his drink. Not exactly the kind of place I used to frequent, is it? I looked around. It was a decent enough restaurant, but definitely not the upscale establishments we used to go to when I was paying. How are you doing, David? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. How do you think I'm doing? I'm 42 years old, living in a studio apartment that smells like mold, driving a car that's older than my nephew. I spend my weekends at the laundromat because I can't afford a washer and dryer. I heard about the miscarriage, I said carefully. I'm sorry about that. David's face hardened. Are you? Are you really sorry? Or are you just being polite? I'm sorry about the loss of a child, yes. Whatever else happened between us, that's a tragedy. Lisa told me she ran into you. She said you two had coffee. We did. She also told me she told you some things. About when our affair actually started. I nodded, not trusting my voice to remain steady. David drained his whiskey and signaled the bartender for another. I suppose she painted me as some kind of monster. She told me the truth, David. Something you never did. The truth, he repeated bitterly. The truth is that I was stupid. The truth is that I had everything I could ever want, and I threw it away because I thought I deserved more. He looked at me directly for the first time since I sat down. The truth is that every day for the past 8 months, I've regretted what I did to you. Not just because my life is shit now, but because you didn't deserve what I put you through. No, I didn't. You were a good wife, Maya. You were generous and hardworking and loyal. You supported my dreams even when they didn't make financial sense. You made me feel like I was successful even when I was contributing almost nothing to our life together. His new drink arrived and he stared into it instead of drinking. And I repaid all of that by cheating on you for 3.5 years. I repaid your loyalty by humiliating you in front of everyone we knew. Why? David, I've never understood why. What was I not giving you that made you think you needed to look elsewhere? He was quiet for so long I thought he wasn't going to answer. You want to know the truth? He finally said. You weren't doing anything wrong. You were perfect. That was the problem. I frowned, not understanding what he meant. Maya, you made more money than me. You were more successful than me. You were smarter than me. Every day I lived with the knowledge that you could do better than me. Every day I waited for you to realize that you had settled. David, that's ridiculous. I loved you. I know you did. And I couldn't handle it. I couldn't handle being the lucky one in the relationship. So I sabotaged it before you could leave me for someone more worthy of you. The admission hung between us like a physical presence. Lisa made me feel like I was the catch, he continued. She was impressed by the house, by the cars, by the lifestyle. She didn't know it was all because of your money. To her, I looked successful. So you destroyed our marriage to protect your ego. I destroyed our marriage because I'm a coward, he corrected. I was too insecure to appreciate what I had and too selfish to just be grateful for it. David finally took a sip of his drink. And now I'm sitting in a chain restaurant at 9 o'clock on a Saturday night, drinking alone because I can't afford to go anywhere nicer. And the woman I cheated with won't return my phone calls because I can't support her the way she expected. Lisa isn't taking your calls? She blocked my number 3 weeks ago. Apparently she's dating her new boss now, someone who can actually afford to take her to nice restaurants. The irony was almost too perfect. David had cheated on me with Lisa. Lisa had left him when he couldn't provide for her. And now she was with someone else who could give her the lifestyle she wanted. Do you see the pattern, David? I asked gently. He looked at me with tired eyes. What pattern? You left me for Lisa because you thought she would make you feel better about yourself. Lisa left you for her boss because he can give her what she wants. None of it was about love. It was all about what each person thought they could get from the other. David finished his drink and set the glass down on the bar with a decisive thud. Maya, I know this is going to sound crazy, and I know you have every right to laugh in my face, but I have to ask, is there any chance at all, that you might consider giving us another try? I stared at him in amazement. After everything that had happened, after all the pain and betrayal and humiliation, he was still thinking there might be a way back. David, are you serious right now? I know I fucked up. I know I don't deserve another chance. But Maya, we had 8 good years before I ruined everything. We could have that again. No, we couldn't. Why not? I've learned my lesson. I know what I lost now. I stood up from the bar stool and looked down at this man who had once been my husband, who I had once planned to grow old with, who I had once thought I knew better than I knew myself. David, you haven't learned anything. Even now, sitting here telling me how much you regret what you did, you're still trying to use me. You don't want me back because you love me. You want me back because your life is hard now, and you remember how easy it was when I was taking care of everything. I picked up my purse and started to walk away, then turned back. I hope you figure out how to be happy with your own life, David. But that's not my responsibility anymore. That conversation with David was 2 years ago. I'm telling you this story now because I want you to understand that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing that could have happened. When I walked into my house that day and found the baby shower celebrating my husband's affair, I thought my life was over. I thought I had lost everything that mattered to me. But what I actually lost was dead weight. People who didn't value me, a marriage that was built on lies, and a version of myself that was too accommodating for her own good. Here's what happened to everyone involved in this story. David never recovered financially from our divorce. The last I heard, he was still living in that studio apartment, still struggling to make ends meet on his salary alone. He dated a few women over the past couple of years, but none of the relationships lasted more than a few months. Apparently, when you can't offer the lifestyle that my income had provided, you have to rely on your personality to attract people. David discovered his wasn't as charming as he thought. Lisa moved back in with her parents after our coffee conversation and eventually started dating her boss, just as David had told me. But that relationship ended when she got pregnant again, and her boss made it clear he wasn't interested in being a father. She's now a single mother working part-time and living with her parents with her 1-year-old daughter. I heard she's been trying to contact David, looking for financial support, but he's made it clear he has nothing to offer her. My family, the people who pressured me to forgive David and work things out, learned what it means to choose sides. I cut contact with my mother for 8 months after the divorce. When she finally apologized for not supporting me, we began to slowly rebuild our relationship. But it's different now. I trust her less, and she knows it. David's family, who had made me feel guilty for not being more understanding, never reached out to apologize. That told me everything I needed to know about their character. As for me, I'm living my best life, and I mean that sincerely. I got promoted to regional director 6 months after the divorce was final. My work performance actually improved once I wasn't carrying the stress of David's betrayal and the dying marriage. I make even more money now, but it's all mine to spend and invest as I choose. I renovated the house completely, erasing every trace of the life David and I had shared. I turned his old office into a reading room with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. I redecorated our former bedroom in colors he hated but I loved. I planted a garden in the backyard where that awful baby shower had taken place, literally covering the scene of my humiliation with something beautiful that I created. I started traveling for pleasure instead of just for work. I've been to Italy, Greece, Japan, and New Zealand in the past 2 years. I eat at expensive restaurants without worrying about the cost. I buy clothes I love without asking anyone's opinion. I make decisions based solely on what makes me happy. And yes, I'm dating again. His name is Marcus, and he's a doctor I met at a medical conference where I was presenting. He's financially independent, emotionally mature, and incapable of the kind of deception David specialized in. More importantly, he's with me because he genuinely enjoys my company, not because he needs me to subsidize his lifestyle. The most surprising thing about this whole experience is how much stronger I became. For years, I had defined myself partly through my marriage, partly through being the person everyone could depend on to fix their problems. When David betrayed me and my family failed to support me, I learned that I didn't need any of them to be whole. I learned that being alone is infinitely better than being with someone who doesn't value you. I learned that people who truly love you don't ask you to accept betrayal for their convenience. I learned that walking away from toxicity, even when it's difficult, is always the right choice. David texted me on what would have been our 10th wedding anniversary last month. The message just said, "I'm sorry. I hope you're happy." I read it, felt nothing, and deleted it without responding. His apology didn't matter to me anymore because I had already moved on completely. I found out later through mutual acquaintances that he had been hoping I might respond, maybe even suggest we meet for coffee to talk. He's apparently been telling people that he thinks enough time has passed that we might be able to be friends. The delusion is almost impressive. Here's what I want you to understand if you're going through something similar. You are not responsible for managing other people's feelings about the consequences of their actions. You are not required to make things easier for people who made your life harder. You are not obligated to minimize your own pain to accommodate people who caused it. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time. When someone chooses to betray you, they have chosen to lose you. When people pressure you to forgive before you're ready, they're prioritizing their comfort over your healing. I'm happier now at 35 than I was at 30 when I thought I had the perfect marriage. I'm more confident, more selective about who I allow in my life, and completely comfortable with my own company. I have learned the difference between being loved and being used, and I will never settle for the latter again. The day I walked into that baby shower was the day my real life began. Sometimes the worst betrayal is actually the best gift someone can give you, the gift of showing you exactly who they are and freeing you to find something better. David did me a favor when he cheated on me. He just doesn't know it yet.